Grab a cup of tea or listen as you go, ladies. This is your hour with Dr. Zoe, your life and relationship coach. With encouragement, on-point insight, inspiring guests, health tips, and advice, Dr. Zoe helps busy women keep their mind in the game by redefining your superwoman. You're listening to The Dr. Zoe Show.
Hi there, I'm Dr. Zoe, and you are a woman who is strong and capable and sometimes tired. If you're listening for the first time, welcome. My show is a live radio show that I also podcast. If you're a woman, you've come to the right place. I'm a licensed psychotherapist and a life and relationship coach. I believe that every woman has a superpower, and my passion is to help you find it, embrace it, and share it with the world. I love connecting with you ladies, especially on social media. Your responses encourage me and help me to provide content that's helpful to you, I hope. So you can connect with me by texting the word join to 38470. That's the word join to 38470. And you can follow me on your social medias. I love your input. If you have an idea for a show, it's also probably one that other women would benefit from as well. So share it. I've been off for 2 weeks. It's crazy. I don't think I've been off from this show for 2 weeks yet. And I really miss the show. We had Thanksgiving, and then my daughter had a pretty major surgery, and we just got back home 2 days ago. And thank you for any of your prayers and your well wishes. I really appreciate it. She's recovering at home and she's doing really well. And I'm back to supermom duties and work duties. I did get a little bit of a pause in the hospital. I didn't get any rest because they keep you awake 24/7, but I did get a little bit of a mental pause. And that's so crucial for busy women. We don't often take the time to evaluate what we're doing to see if it still serves us. And I know I've talked about that before, but if life doesn't give you a pause sometimes, then you need to schedule them in for yourself, even if it's just an hour to sit and think about your life so that you're not doing things that don't serve you. I love Pat Drucker's quote, "There is nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which shouldn't be done at all." Whenever I hear that quote, it kind of makes me cringe. And so I know that it's a little bit of a wake-up call for me. So I just want to share that with you guys because I want to make sure I'm not doing things that don't need to be done. And I hope it's a little reminder for you too. Today, my guest is Dr. Sara Schewitz. Did I say that correctly?
Almost. Schewitz.
Schewitz, sorry. My guest is Dr. Sara Schewitz, a licensed psychologist and a couples therapist. And her website is coupleslearn.com. I really love that. And we're going to be talking all about how your core wounds from childhood affect your relationship and even really your relationship choices as well. And we're also going to throw in 4 sets of behaviors that lead to divorce. So this is all about your stuff and your relationships. And we all have stuff and we all have relationships, even if you aren't in one at the moment. So listen up. This one is definitely for you. And once you understand how screwed up you are, we're not going to leave you there. I promise we're not going to leave you there. We're going to give you some tools to go along with that knowledge. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I am too. You know, I was just talking to you about how I haven't had a lot of female psychotherapists on. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you. 2 therapists talking. Oh, and at the end, we are going to be answering questions that my viewers or listeners have sent in all about relationships. And if you are listening live and you'd like to ask some questions, you can. Troy, is there a number people can text? 818-919-0228. You can text some questions about relationships. So let's talk about this, Sara.
Yes.
You specialize in working with couples.
I do.
And you mainly work with couples with what types of issues?
Oh, all types of issues. But I think everything always stems from communication, and healthy communication is key for a healthy relationship.
Absolutely. So let's talk about those childhood, because I'm sure people are curious, like, what about my childhood is affecting my relationship?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about how things that happened to us in childhood, how our relationships with our parents in childhood affect our current relationships?
Absolutely. So we all have this conglomeration of traits called an imago. And your imago is really a conglomeration of traits from people who were important to you when you were a child. It could be your parents, it could be your aunts and uncles and siblings and grandparents, whoever was really influential in your life. And this conglomeration of traits is kind of what we're looking for in a partner without even realizing it. It's all kind of done unconsciously. So yeah, when like you meet someone and you just immediately feel like you know them and you connect and you're like, oh, everything's just so easy. It feels so good. I feel like I've known this person for my whole life.
Right.
That's when you've met your imago. The connection's amazing. A lot of people will call it soulmate, or there's other terms I've heard like twin flame, things like that.
Right.
They all kind of point to the same direction. It's basically hitting this perfect combination of good and bad traits in an individual that you're unconsciously looking for. And when that happens, those people can make you feel really good, but they can also trigger you in a way that nobody else can trigger you.
Absolutely. And imago. Now, as therapists, we are very familiar with that term, but not a lot of people are. And so there is actually an entire industry of therapy surrounding imago therapy, which focuses on couples and helping them understand that, how their childhood relationships. Now, from what I understand, we tend to also gravitate towards kind of the parent that we have the most issues with, right? Those kinds of qualities and partners.
Yeah, you can for sure. I think it can go good and bad. So it's not necessarily that you're always attracted to
The negative.
It's both, you have kind of two parts. This is very simplified, but you kind of have two parts to your brain, the old brain and the new brain. And
tell us about that.
Yeah. So your old brain's kind of in the back of your head, back by your neck. And that's like, some people call it your lizard brain. It's your more instinctual side.
Right.
And that's what's really active when you're an infant. Your needs need to be met as an infant or you die. So your lizard brain, your old brain, whatever you want to call it,
Those basic needs. Yeah.
Yeah. It gets really triggered if, that's why babies cry if they need something, because to them, it literally feels like life or death. So then you start to learn, okay, people with these characteristics, meet my needs, they're safe people. That's why when you meet somebody who has those characteristics later in life, it kind of reminds your old brain of, oh, that's that safe person. That reminds me of that safe person that feels really good. And that's where that like instant attraction comes from. But the thing is, our parents or caretakers, whoever you grew up with, nobody's perfect, right? And no matter how awesome your childhood was, you have some wounds. Your parents did not meet your needs 100% of the time. There was not a time when you didn't always feel perfect. And so though that person, your imago, can make you feel so good, they're also uniquely suited to wound you in the same way that you were wounded as a child. So that's where people really find they get triggered a lot when they're in a very close committed relationship, because that's when your stuff can start to come up a lot.
And I also know that people will feel like, I picked somebody different this time.
Yeah.
Right?
You think you did.
You think you did. Yes. He's opposite. He has a totally different type of job. He seems to have a very different type of personality. And then you get in the relationship and it's like, wait, I'm dealing with the same thing.
Yeah. It's crazy. We don't realize how much our unconscious mind really controls what we do. That's why it's so powerful just to know this kind of stuff, because then you can start to realize what are some of the limiting beliefs I've created because of these experiences in childhood, and how can I shift them so that I get different results? If you're getting results you don't like, if you keep dating great people that are great matches for you and it just hasn't worked out for logistical reasons, then awesome.
Then you don't need to listen to this show.
Then
you're not about you.
Fine. Also, I'm not sure if you exist.
Right. Exactly. Because like you said, everybody does have wounds. So in the beginning, you talked about what did you say?
So that's kind of a separate topic, the 4 toxic behaviors.
No,
is that
I
what
was
you're
thinking about the imago. You were saying that there were different, I don't know what you were saying.
Oh, I don't remember now either, but the 2 types of the brain, is that what you're thinking? So basically the new brain is kind of our conscious thought. And so what we want you guys to be able to do eventually, if you're kind of struggling with this unconscious, functioning from the unconscious state, picking people from the unconscious state, is start to become more conscious and think from a more new brain place, kind of the more prefrontal cortex, the front of your brain. And that can really think more logically, because when we're kids, we develop these beliefs. But as a 6-year-old, you don't really have a whole lot of logical thought, right? Like you don't you just don't function the way an adult would.
Of
And
course.
you tend to be very egocentric as a child. That's, the nature of childhood.
Absolutely. It's all about them.
Yeah. So we want to shift that old brain kind of childhood thinking to the new brain conscious adult thinking. And that's where you can really have successful relationships.
Okay. So let's talk first about a woman who is dating.
Yes.
And then I want to talk about a woman who is married.
Okay.
And might go, well, okay, I've already picked the guy. We're together. This is a done deal. What can I do about that? So for the woman who's dating, and let's say maybe she's consecutively dating, and like I said, she picks the same freaking guy over and over again, even though he looks totally different. How can she use that prefrontal cortex to really start to evaluate whether she's picking the guy because of, those past ones?
Yeah. So there's a great book that I recommend for people that's so helpful on this topic. If you really want to dig into the work on your own, it's called Getting the Love You Want by Harville Hendrix.
Yeah.
He also wrote one for singles called Keeping the Love You Have. Honestly, though, even if you're a single, I prefer the Getting the Love You Want. I just like how it's written a little bit better for some reason. But in there's a series of exercises that really helps you uncover those unconscious beliefs and then realize where they came from, why you're creating a story about something that maybe doesn't need to be created, and then shift those beliefs. So I think that's the best place to start looking at, okay, what are some of the patterns? What are some of the consistent things I keep seeing? For example, one that I see a lot in my practice, I'm sure you do as well, is women who date unavailable men. Right?
Yes.
Whether they're physically unavailable, they're in another state, they're in another country, they're emotionally unavailable, they're married, things like that, right? This happens, and it can happen over and over again. And a common thing I'll see is that they've somehow developed this belief that people are going to leave them. Maybe they were abandoned by one of their parents as a child, or maybe it was something even more simple where like dad went away on a business trip at a crucial moment in this kid's life. And it just made them feel abandoned. It just made them feel like people who I thought I could count on are not going to be there for me, and they're not going to be available for me. So you kind of create that belief, and then you function from that belief.
Well, and I think it's two-part. I think just like you said, number one, you're starting from that belief or that story you tell yourself that people aren't going to be available for me. And so you start relationships that for you are protective, right? Because if they're already distant, then you don't have to create that intimacy and then you don't have to get hurt. But then the second thing is also that's familiar to you.
Yes.
And so you're attracted to it, right? So you've got both of those things going on. And yes, I do see that so much in my practice. What I also see is the denial, of course, and the excuses and the stories that get made up. And I will tell women all the time, you actually have to believe what the guy tells you, right? Because a guy will say something like, I'm not really that interested. And she hears, I'm going to be more interested in you if you do this, or if you do this, then things will get better. Or I don't really want to get married. Well, he doesn't really want to get married now, but in 2 months, he's going to want to get married.
Yeah. You're not dating his potential, ladies. You're dating who he is now.
You are dating who he is now.
Yeah.
And, the same goes in marriages, is that you are married to who you are now. And at some point you have to accept that person for who they are instead of who you want them to be. Right. Yeah. So I definitely see a lot of the dating unavailable men, and that's a protective mechanism. So what can a single woman do? So if she notices that she's doing that, how can she get out of that pattern? How does she even recognize it? Because often you don't see it in the beginning because the guy's, charming and he's chasing you and it's exciting and it doesn't feel like he's unavailable. But when you get into the relationship, you realize that he is. So I'm going to have you hold on to that for just a minute. We are getting ready to go on a quick break, and I am here with Dr. Schewitz. I said it correctly. And we are talking about relationships. We're talking about how our core wounds affect our relationships and things we can do about it. This is Dr. Zoe, and we'll be back in just a minute.
People ask me, how do you have so much energy? I am not a coffee drinker, but I love the benefits of matcha green tea. More antioxidants than coffee and a smooth energy, not the jittery kind that lasts me all day long. Perfect for you supermoms too. I have searched the world over for that perfect matcha for my smoothies, and I have found it at Kiss Me Organics. You can get it too at kissmeorganics.com. Enter the promo code Dr. Zoe, DRZOE, for 10% off and free shipping. Experience the smooth, healthy, organic energy of matcha green tea. KissMeOrganics.com.
This is Dr. Zoe. We are just back after our commercial break, and I'm here with Dr. Sara Schewitz, and we are talking about relationships, ladies. We're going to finish up about a little bit of dating stuff, and then we are going to get into marriage for you married women as well. It all applies. So I was just asking Dr. Sara about, okay, so you're dating and you find out you're dating the same guy over and over again. Those issues come up. And so what can women do to make different choices, to figure out how to do that and figure out how to find out maybe that those guys are the same guys or not?
So first of all, if you've recognized that you're dating the same guy over and over again, congrats, because that's more than some people ever acknowledge or recognize. So that's huge.
Very good point.
And then the second thing is, I really think focusing on connection versus protection is really helpful when you start dating emotionally unavailable guys.
And so what do you mean by that?
So when we're in a protective state, we're trying to maybe hold back some of our feelings, not express all of our needs because we don't want to impose on that person. We're not really getting to the fact that he can't handle those feelings. He can't meet those needs because you're not requiring of that.
You're not requiring him to do that because it's early in the relationship. So you're probably already making, excuses like, well, it's early, so I shouldn't require him to.
I shouldn't get all worried about that. If he doesn't text me for 2 days, whatever, it's still early. Right. But if you need that, be honest about that, because you're not doing him or you any favors by pretending that your needs don't exist, because once you're comfortable, they're going to come out.
Right.
And then he's going to go, whoa, this is not what I signed up for. I signed up for the girl who didn't care if I didn't call for 3 days in a row,
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So I think we kind of manifest that in a way, or like just being more open and expressive in the beginning and really focusing on what you need to connect. It gets to the heart of the matter sooner. So you can say, okay, this isn't the right guy for me, and move on.
I love that. That's great. So we're going to go to marriage now. So you're married and you find out that you have married a guy who hits all those triggers for you. All of that stuff is popping up and you're going, what am I doing? And what can I do now? Because we're married.
Yeah. So first of all, this is an awesome place to be, because you can do the best work on yourself in a committed relationship like this. You really can, if you're both willing to dig in and do the work. And I really think working with a therapist on this stuff is important. You can really make some great progress in who you are, how you feel, what triggers you, and just learning about yourself and growing. So
did you hear that, ladies?
Awesome.
This is a great place to be. It's okay if your husband is triggering all those emotional wounds, all those issues that you have, because you're in a committed relationship. You guys can talk about it and you can recognize that it's about you. Your issues are his issues are about him, but your issues are about you, and you can start to work on it.
Yeah. One of the reasons I actually recommend the book, because if you're not in a committed relationship, I don't want you to feel like you can't work on this, because you absolutely can. The book, Getting the Love You Want, really works from that space of no matter what kind of relationship you're in, you can really work on this. The singles version, Keeping the Love You Have, the message I got from reading that is, unless you're married, you can't do this work because the relationship isn't close enough and it's not going to trigger you in that way. I don't agree with that. That's why I really recommend the other one. I think it's just a more accepting space of like, yeah, you can do this work, and you can do this work if you're single too.
Right.
Just
on your
look
own.
at the patterns.
Yes, look at the patterns. And, I think once you've been in a relationship for a year and you guys are regularly dating and committed, some of those things are going to come up. It's not like you have to be married before any of those issues come up.
Yeah, especially people live together ahead of marriage a lot of times now. That really brings it to a whole new level, So yeah, you can definitely work on a lot of this stuff with or without a partner.
And so how would a woman start to do that? And what kinds of things do you notice tend to get triggered early in relationships or early in marriages, I should say?
So I think one thing is if you're hysterical, it's historical. And what I mean by that is if you're overreacting to something and you can't even explain why you're so mad that he forgot for the 5th time in a row to pick up milk on the way home from work, it's not about the milk.
Right.
It's about an unmet need that's coming up from your past. And our past doesn't like just come up in a nice little package and say, here I am.
I wish it was.
Yeah. So I think just start realizing when you're overreacting and go, hold on, let me take a look. This is about me. This isn't about what's going on here. Yeah.
And so then do you think that you should go talk to your husband about that? Or is that something you just recognize and start to work on yourself?
No, I think you should talk about it. And there's a whole dialogue, like a guided dialogue called the Imago dialogue that is really helpful in teaching you how to empathize with each other, how to really validate each other, how to understand each other's perspective as a reasonable perspective given their situation, right? Like given your past, given all the limiting beliefs you have, I understand why you think that way. It makes sense that you think that way.
Okay, we're using therapy words. Number one, you said Imago, what is it called? The worksheet or?
Imago dialogue.
Dialogue. I'm going to put that in the podcast notes for you guys who are listening podcast. So we'll find the link to that. So you used a word, limiting beliefs. Not everybody knows what that means.
Okay.
So can we talk a little bit about what are limiting beliefs and how do we figure out what those are and how do they apply to our marriage?
Yeah, I think they're just stories we create as children about what something means. Like I gave the example earlier of, the dad left when you were little.
Yes.
So you create potentially a limiting belief that you can't count on the men in your life, right? And then you operate from that space.
Right. And so you're projecting, another therapy word, but we are putting those thoughts and looking at really the world through that lens. And when we do that, we're going to find it and we're going to experience it. And the thing about limiting beliefs is they are almost always a lie, an absolute lie. And we don't even realize how many limiting beliefs we have that we act on as if they are truth. And that's why also 2 people can be in a relationship, can have a conversation and hear totally different things.
Yes.
Because they're each seeing it through that lens, right, of their own limiting beliefs. Okay, so how then do we start to find them? So you said this Imago dialogue, it helps you find some of those limiting beliefs?
Well, that's more once you found them, how do you discuss them and empathize with each other?
Okay.
There is an exercise you can do where you kind of do a meditation, like a guided meditation and walk yourself through your childhood home. This is a little touchy-feely, but I'm into it. And you imagine all the different caretakers that you had or the important people you had in your life. And you kind of just closing your eyes, think of all the positive traits of these people, all the negative traits of these people. And you just kind of walk through your home and do inventory and have a little conversation with each of these people and really notice what you appreciated about them and what you feel like you didn't get that you needed from them. And then, you go through that whole meditation and then you write down those traits and you write down the positive on the top of a piece of paper and, split it in half with a line, the negative on the bottom. And then you circle the ones that are the most important to you, maybe like the top 3 or 4 of each. That's your Imago right there. Yeah.
I don't think that's touchy-feely at all. I think that's just necessary.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you're not coming from a therapeutic background or you haven't done a lot of the personal development work yet, it does
feel that way.
Yeah. And I think this is really great work to do with a therapist because it does go deep and it is sometimes hard to like dig and really realize how many of those beliefs you've created. So the book is amazing. It's a great place to start, but I really recommend doing that work with a therapist.
Do you think you would need to find an Imago therapist? And are you that?
So I haven't gotten certified yet. And I'm so excited to do that when it's like a whole year-long training and the trainings haven't worked with my schedule yet.
Okay.
And it's only once a year in LA. So it's a bummer. I think you can do great work with any therapist on this. Certainly an Imago therapist has more training in guiding you through the dialogue and whatnot. So it just depends. A lot of my graduate training was focused on that. My supervisor, who I worked with very closely, is an Imago therapist. And he really kind of, I was his little apprentice in that. So I think it just depends on the training of the therapist and what their modality is, because every therapist is different.
Right. And some of the stuff is just basic. I mean, Imago is, really specific, but it's really just basic to development and how we interact psychologically and emotionally. So when you talk about the imago dialogue, what does that look like? Is that something we could do here?
Totally. It's basically just teaching your clients how to be therapists to one another, right? And you already know the imago dialogue as a therapist. You do it every day in session, I guarantee it, where it's really just the first step is listening, and then you just repeat back. So it's literally like just paraphrasing what they said.
Yes, I've definitely used that tool.
Yes.
And that's because of what I just said earlier, that you can speak to somebody and realize they didn't even hear what you said. And communication, of course, isn't at all about what you say. It's only about what is heard. And so, if I say, I really hate it when you leave the refrigerator door open when you're cooking, right?
So I might interpret that and say, so you think I'm irresponsible and that I never close the fridge door and that I just don't care. And you would say, nope, that is not what I said.
So then I would repeat back. So if you say that, then I would repeat back.
Yeah, you would correct me and say, no, I said whatever it was you said.
Right. I said that I dislike it when that refrigerator door is left open when you're cooking, because you cook for an hour and you leave the door open because you think you're going to keep going back and forth. And I think about waste and I think about the food in there. And that's what it's about. It's not about how I feel about you as a person, right?
Love it. So, and that actually brings up another thing. You want to keep your sentences kind of short in the beginning, because your partner's not going to be able to remember every single thing you said. And you really want them to be able to paraphrase. So if I was correctly repeating things back, I would say, okay, so you don't like when I leave the refrigerator door open because you're energy conscious and it's a whole hour with it being open. And it's not about me, but it's really just about you care about the environment and you want me to care about the environment too. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I wonder how that little dialogue there, I wonder how that applies to the core wound. So I guess my question is it really the energy that I'm upset about? Is it something else? Right. Or maybe does that have nothing to do with it? And it's more about when I say that, he hears I'm irresponsible, and that's really about his core wound. Okay.
And there's 2 more steps to the dialogue that we can get to as well.
Okay. We are going to get back to that right after this little break. We're talking with Dr. Schewitz, and this is a great conversation about relationships. And we are also, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about 4 toxic behaviors that lead to divorce.
Yeah.
We will be back in just a minute.
People ask me, how do you have so much energy? I am not a coffee drinker, but I love the benefits of matcha green tea. More antioxidants than coffee and a smooth energy, not the jittery kind that lasts me all day long. Perfect for you supermoms too. I have searched the world over for that perfect matcha for my smoothies, and I have found it at Kiss Me Organics. You can get it too at kissmeorganics.com. Enter the promo code Dr. Zoe, DRZOE, for 10% off and free shipping. Experience the smooth, healthy, organic energy of matcha green tea. KissMeOrganics.com.
Hello, we are back. This is Dr. Zoe, and I'm here with Dr. Sara from coupleslearn.com, right? And we've been talking about relationships and how your childhood issues affect your ability to communicate. And we were just talking about the imago dialogue. You guys can check out the podcast notes on that. And one of the first aspects of the dialogue is making sure that you're checking in with the other person to make sure that they're hearing what you're actually trying to get across to them. So you actually ask, tell me what you heard. And so let's talk about the other 2 parts of the dialogue.
So these are really important parts, because the second step is kind of empathizing and saying, that must make you feel X, Y, and Z, right? So, we were giving the example of, you don't like when I leave the fridge open because you feel like it's a waste of energy and it just doesn't make you feel environmentally conscious. That must make you feel anxious. That must make you feel guilty. That must make you feel just uncomfortable about the impact you're having on the environment. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And you always want to ask that, is that accurate? Because if the answer is no, then that gives your partner the opportunity to, clarify, because we don't always hear things correctly. Then the next step is, why does that make sense? So you got to validate your partner. Okay. So that makes sense because I know that you're somebody who really cares about the environment. And I know you really care about the impact that we make on this world and you want this world to be good for our children. So I get why you think that. And I get why you feel that. Like that makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I don't necessarily use those words, but when I'm working with couples, one of the things that I ask them to try to do is to both understand that we're both right when they have that type of discussion, because if they can both come from a place of we're both right, or she's right or he's right, because then it helps you put yourself in that person's shoes and not take it personally.
Yeah, which is that's literally 90% of arguments. We don't actually need a solution. We just need to know that the other person understands where we're coming from.
Very good point. Very good point. So is that the last one? Is the empathy?
So it's reflect is step one. The second one is empathize. And the third one is validate.
Validate. Yes. Don't forget to validate.
Yeah.
Got to validate. That is key. Okay, great. Those are just some really wonderful tools that I hope that you women out there can start to utilize and think about. So now we're going to talk about 4 toxic behaviors that lead to divorce.
Yes.
I definitely want to know what these are.
Yeah. So just a little background on this. There's somebody named John Gottman, who is a very famous researcher in the marriage department.
Yes.
And he kind of realized after watching so many couples and working with so many couples that there were really 4 behaviors that he saw if they were present. It was like a 96% accuracy that those people were going to get divorced. He could predict it with a very high level of accuracy.
Yes, it's amazing.
So pay attention because these are serious. So in order of least impactful to most impactful on your relationship, they are criticism. I'll explain what each one are, but criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, and contempt.
Yes.
Okay. So criticism, pretty much what it sounds like. We women tend to be more likely to criticize than men. But there's a difference between criticizing and giving constructive feedback or complaining. Complaining is actually okay. You've got to have some, open communication about what bothers you and expressing that so that your partner knows not to do it. But when you make blanket statements about their personality, like you're lazy or you're uncaring, right? That's criticism.
Right. It's global and it's who you are. And there's nothing you can do about that. It's not about a behavior like, oh, can you change this? This is who you are as a person and I don't like it.
Exactly. Right? Versus I feel like you're not really listening to me in this moment. Like you're not being a good listener in this moment. Not you are a bad listener.
So if you notice or if you recognize yourself in that you tend to say things like that to your husband, take a step back and think, okay, what was the behavior that made me want to say that, and then address the behavior instead of calling him that globally, right?
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. Perfect reframe. And then we have defensiveness. Men tend to be, this could go either way. Men tend to do more stonewalling. But so defensiveness is basically when you don't take blame for your side of what's going on, right? You always want to take 100% responsibility for your 50%, meaning it takes 2 to get in an argument. Right. Each of you contribute 50%. So you got to take responsibility for that 50%. Yes. There's always something you can take blame for or acknowledge that you could have done better.
Right. Take responsibility for your part in it.
It puts your partner's guard down. It makes for a more collaborative experience and conversation.
So when you're arguing or your partner comes to you with complaints or an issue, if you notice that you're always defensive, that, well, that's not me, that's you, that's your problem, or I'm not doing that, that's a toxic behavior to the relationship.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So an example I like to give for that really quickly is like, let's say you guys are rushing out the door to a concert and you forget the tickets and you get to the place and your husband is like, okay, all right, grab the tickets. And you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot them. And he's like,
that's something I would do.
Yeah, me too. And he's like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. Come on. If you're going to be defensive, you could say, well, you were rushing me out the door. It's not my fault. How am I supposed to remember everything? Why do I have to remember everything? Right. Or you could say, I am so sorry. I can't believe I forgot these tickets. I know this was such a fun night for us. And now it's not going to be just how we planned.
Yeah, that's a good one. And for some people, that is so much harder than for others. And maybe it's modeling, in your family of origin. We're going to go back to those core wounds. That makes it harder for you to be able to take that responsibility. But it is so, so crucial because it goes back to what you said. the other person feels validated, right?
Right.
And if you are always saying it's your fault, then you're taking away the other person feeling heard, understood, or validated.
Yeah. So the third one is stonewalling.
Mm-hmm.
This one, men are much more likely to do than women,
Mm-hmm.
and it's coming from a good place in their defense. So stonewalling is when you basically shut down.
Mm-hmm.
You might be in the middle of a conversation and you just go, yeah, all right, yeah. And you stop responding. You're not really contributing or engaging anymore. You're just done, or
Yep.
maybe you walk away.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you just start staring at your phone, like you're shut down.
So wait, how is that coming from a good place?
Yeah. Because it's so frustrating
Yes,
if you're
it
on the
is.
receiving end of that.
Uh-huh.
However, usually a man's way of thinking is, I don't want to make this any worse. So I'm just going to shut up right now because
Okay.
anything I say is just going to make her more angry. And if I just shut up, she's going to get over it quicker.
But he doesn't realize that actually makes us more angry.
Yes.
Because then we don't feel heard and we feel ignored and we feel like he's just pushing us away and maybe even abandoned. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It could be triggering some stuff from the past for
Mm-hmm.
sure. But what we also have to realize as women is that we are much more comfortable with emotions in general.
Mm-hmm.
With our girlfriends, we talk about emotions nonstop.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're always rehashing things
Yes.
with our mothers, our sisters, our friends, whatever. Guys don't do that.
Right.
They really don't. So they're just not that comfortable in emotional situations. They're not as used to being exposed to it, and they get flooded more easily, meaning overwhelmed. Their heart starts racing. If your heart gets above, I think it's like 98 beats per minute,
Mm-hmm.
you literally can't think as well. Your brain stops functioning as well.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Information. Okay.
So when they shut down, it might be because they're getting flooded and they literally just can't think anymore. Like they're done.
Yeah. And I think for men, we hold the ability to have ambiguity about our feelings so much better.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas men, it's like either it's this or it's this. When we women are in this space of, well, no, it might be a little this, or maybe it's this, or I don't know what then I think for them, it just gets overwhelming.
Yeah. So if your guy says, I just need to take 10 minutes to like calm down before we talk about this, give him that 10 minutes. But fellas, if you're listening, you got to be the one to reinitiate the conversation at the time you agree to reinitiate.
And so if your guy is stonewalling, because often they don't say, I need to take 10 minutes, they just shut down.
Right. So
maybe if you see that your guy is stonewalling, you could say, do you think you need to take 10 minutes? Or when you do that behavior, it makes me feel blah, 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 right? Instead, when you start to feel like you need to do that, could you just ask for 10 minutes?
Love it.
Right?
That's such a great way to say it. Yeah.
Very cool. These are really, really informative little behaviors that maybe all of us recognize a little bit of ourselves in. So we got to work on it. So there's one more.
And this is the most important one. So I want to make sure we don't skip it, because if this is there, it's really detrimental to your relationship.
Okay.
It's called contempt. And it's hard to explain, but it's easy to recognize. Contempt is basically when you feel like you're better than your partner. You're smarter than them. You're faster than them, better at them than something, right? Eye rolling is the biggest sign of contempt. Like, you would say that.
Disgust.
Right?
And anger and a lot of bitterness.
Yeah. It's just really a loss of respect for your partner.
Yes.
And when that respect is lost, it's very hard to have a loving romantic relationship with somebody you don't respect. So
that's a very good point. And you're absolutely right about that. And then the question is,
what do you do about it?
Yeah. If I see that I have that contempt, what do I do about it? Or if I see my husband, interacts with me in that way, what do I do about it?
You get to start recognizing the positive qualities that your partner has because they're there, but you're looking through the lens of what's wrong with you.
Right. Yes.
And when you first got together, I guarantee you were looking through the lens of what's right with you.
All the right things. Yes, of course.
Yeah. And you forgot all the bad things because you were focused on the good. So I would encourage you to write down 3 things your partner did that day at the end of every day that made you feel good, or that you appreciate about your partner, or that you respect about your partner, to just change that lens.
So you can get it back.
Totally. You just got to recognize it and make an effort.
Good news. Good news. Okay. So those actions, those behaviors of the eye rolling, that disgust kind of energy, when you start to notice that is predominating your conversation or you're thinking about your spouse, then a really good thing you can do is to write 3 things every single day. And you know what I think would be great is to take those 3 things that you write every single day and put them in a jar. So they start to build up. And maybe, after a couple of months or whenever you're really feeling negative, you can actually go and just look. And, day after day, you can look at all the wonderful things that you've written about your spouse.
Or what a great birthday gift that would make for your spouse.
Oh, yeah. That would be such a great gift.
Yes. Well, I love that.
Yeah. Okay. So this has been a wonderful conversation, Dr. Sara. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are well, first of all, you do virtual therapy as well, right?
I do.
So can you tell our listeners, how can they connect with you?
Yes. So you can find everything that I do at www.coupleslearn.com.
Mm-hmm.
I do online sessions. I do online individual and couples therapy. And then I'm also recently launched a retreat that's going to be really exciting. It's in Costa Rica.
Ooh.
And it's a 6-day couples retreat. So you can get all the information about that on my website too.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. So we're not done yet. We are going to come back and we're going to I think I have a little health tip, and then we're going to do some real talk. So we are answering real questions from listeners about their relationships. We will be back in just a minute.
People ask me, how do you have so much energy? I am not a coffee drinker, but I love the benefits of matcha green tea. More antioxidants than coffee and a smooth energy, not the jittery kind that lasts me all day long. Perfect for you supermoms too. I have searched the world over for that perfect matcha for my smoothies, and I have found it at Kiss Me Organics. You can get it too at kissmeorganics.com. Enter the promo code Dr. Zoe, DRZOE, for 10% off and free shipping. Experience the smooth, healthy, organic energy of matcha green tea. KissMeOrganics.com.
Hi, guys. It's Dr. Zoe back after a really great relationship conversation with Dr. Sara Schewitz. Real quickly, I'm going to do a health tip, and then we are going to address some questions from my listeners. So health tip today. Remember, your body and mind are intimately connected. You can't have health in one without health in another, and that's why I have my health tips segment. Healthy looks different on everybody, so stop the comparisons, ladies. So today, I'm going to talk about self-medicating. And this is really born out of my time at the hospital with my daughter this last week. We were prescribed, she was prescribed a narcotic called Norco. So when we brought her home from the hospital, the doctor prescribed it for us, and we were supposed to go to a pharmacy and find it. And I had to go to 6 pharmacies in order to, and I never actually got the medication. I had to get a different prescription because all of the pharmacies were out of Norco. And I was just thinking, oh my goodness, we are just such a medicated nation. And I'm sure at some point I looked like a crazy lady who was probably, on narcotics trying to find this medication for my daughter. And it really just floored me. And so I started thinking about just, self-medicating in general. And then I started thinking about myself and the ways that maybe I self-medicate. And certainly when I was at the hospital, it was a little bit of a stressful situation. My daughter had surgery and we were there forever. And I noticed that I wanted things like ice cream. And I was thinking, oh, let me just go get an ice cream. It'll just make me feel so much better. And I had to kind of back up and go, okay, Zoe, if you eat the ice cream, after the ice cream is eaten, you're still going to feel the exact same way you feel right now. So the ice cream is not going to help it, because then you're just going to feel guilty and upset that you just ate ice cream that you shouldn't have been eating because, whatever. So I just wanted to, remind you guys out there that, number one, when we try to self-medicate, we are trying to get rid of a feeling. And often whatever it is that we're doing, whether it's food, whether it's sex, whether it's medication, whether it's an activity or whatever it might be, shopping, what happens, of course, is that for that moment, it goes away, maybe, or we mask it, or we don't feel it. But afterwards, it's still there. And so what I had to say is, okay, why don't you think about whatever it is you're feeling right now? Work on that, process that. And you don't need the ice cream, because the ice cream isn't going to fix it. And so I want you to just do that. Ask yourself, what am I trying to avoid feeling? And try to work on feeling it and processing it instead of medicating or distracting yourself from it. So that's my little health tip for today. So it's Real Talk. If you're just tuning in, this is Dr. Zoe, and this is Real Talk, where I answer questions from my listeners and I share my own musings and encouragement. So please reach out if you have some questions that you'd like me to address on the show. All questions are anonymously. I take your confidentiality seriously as if you were my own client. You can email me questions to Zoe at drzoeshaw.com, or you can connect with me on any of my social media. So I did put out on Instagram and Facebook and maybe Twitter a call for questions about relationships. And the first question is, what if your spouse has a bad habit, say pot smoking, drinking, etc., that really, really bothers you, and he or she doesn't want to quit? They're still functional, they're safe and responsible, and they don't fit the definition of addict because they seldom do it, maybe once a week. But it really bothers you, and you've told them and they don't want to quit. How do you not take that personally? For me, if anything bothered the one that I love, I'd quit in a heartbeat rather than risk losing them. So this is a really great question. I'm going to tackle it, and then Dr. Sara is going to tackle it. So the first thing that I hear, and you can jump in if you want to.
Okay.
The first thing that I hear is that you said he doesn't meet the definition. So I don't know if he does or doesn't meet the definition, but one of the definitions of an addict is someone who continually does something, whether it's sporadic or regularly, despite negative consequences. And if one of the negative consequences is a possibility of losing the relationship, then maybe he is an addict. And then the next thing you said is about taking it personally. How do you not take it personally? First of all, the reason why you shouldn't take it personally is because it's not about you. The biggest issues in relationships that we tend to have is that we do think that things are about us and personal, and then we make them that way. So you're telling yourself this story about his behavior. That's actually a lie. He probably had this behavior before he even met you. So there's no way it can actually be about you. And I'm not saying that he doesn't need to stop, but I'm saying that when you make the story, he does this, that means he doesn't love me. Then the way that you interact with him is based on that belief, you don't love me. And now everything is going to be revolved around that. When if you actually stop and go, wait, that's actually not true. He can love you and be an addict, or maybe just have a bad habit at the same time. So yes, you yourself might quit if you were addicted to something, maybe, but you're not him. And so him not quitting doesn't mean that he doesn't love you. And the other thing is, I always think all behavior makes sense in its context. And so just like Dr. Sara and I were talking, those early wounds, and if you can put yourself in his shoes and understand that for some reason this behavior is important to him, whether it's an emotional, need that he feels he's trying to meet, whatever, it's important to him and it has nothing to do with you. So that's my little spiel. And Sara, what do you?
I would just also add, if there's any, emotional childhood wounds that it's triggering, I would look into that. There might be a history of addiction in your childhood with one of your family members that had an impact on you. So you might be seeing something that's not 100% there because it's bringing back stuff from your past that really triggered you. So I would just maybe look into whether that's present or not.
Yeah. And so as I listen, as I read this question, she didn't say it, but I'm sure a big part of it, she says, how do I not take it personally? My guess is another big part of it is, what do I do? Like, how do I get him to quit?
Yeah. That's not your job.
I know.
You can just express how you feel about it and really dig into why you feel the way you feel about it. Often it comes from a space of needing to feel safe. Yeah. So you might not feel safe when he's engaging in this behavior, or you might not feel like he's reliable when he's engaging in this behavior. And you might feel safer if he just kind of checks in with you before engaging in this behavior. Let's say it's drinking, and maybe you guys set a limit of like, you'll have 2 drinks whenever we go out, or if you want more, like just check in with me and say, hey, I feel like I want to, get a buzz on. I want to have 5 or 6 drinks tonight, whatever it is. Are you cool with that? Like, are you good?
Right.
Check in. And that in itself can make you feel safe.
I think that's a great one, but the communication has to be open enough to do that, because it sounds like there's a little bit of desperation here. And so my guess is that it's an issue that's probably been going on, and they're not talking about it very well at all.
Yeah.
And so you have to start from a place. I'm going to go back to what you talked about, Dr. Sara, is validating, right? And if you can talk to him about maybe why he does the behavior, what he gets out of the behavior, and actually want to hear it and validate that maybe it's important to him for some reason, then maybe you can go to that next step is, okay, I get that you need this for whatever reason you do. It doesn't have anything to do with you loving me or not loving me, And so then what you said, if you need to do this, can you check in with me first and that kind of thing? But it really takes opening up that dialogue from a place of understanding instead of a place of, if you loved me, you wouldn't do it, because that's going to make him stonewall, right?
Right. That is not a way to open a conversation.
Yeah. It's a hard one. And it's a tough one when you have a spouse doing things like that in a relationship that really do, trigger you.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, well, thank you so much to the listener who asked that question. I hope that was helpful. If you have a follow-up question to that, please feel free to address it. So we're going to go on to the next question, if I can find it real quickly. So this person says, I started talking to this guy I met on a dating app. He was really talkative at first. Then he said he would be a bit busy this week. He didn't message me back, so I messaged him and he messaged me back. We planned to meet up on Sunday and he was all for it. Then he never messaged me back. And when I messaged to say, are we still on? He never messaged me back. So what do I do? I think I kind of like him. Help, please.
Oh, girlfriend, I have bad news for you.
Yeah.
He's just not that into you.
He's just not that into you. And when someone's not into you and you move towards them, what happens?
They run away.
And so the best thing you can do is not message him back. And if he does happen to message you, and that's that moving towards you, you need to back off a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. And I think also just trust that God, the universe, whatever your beliefs might be, has your back. And whoever you're supposed to be with is going to show up and pursue you the way that you want to be pursued.
And you don't have to.
You don't have to force it.
Yeah, you don't have to force it. I love that. Thank you. So we are out of time for today. Thank you for tuning in to the Dr. Zoe Show. Tune in next week and every week on Tuesdays from 12 to 1 Pacific and 3 to 4 Eastern at laradionow.com. For those who can't always listen live, check out the rerun of my shows on iTunes, Google Play, Libsyn, and YouTube, where I am your life and relationship coach. I help sometimes struggling superwomen keep your mind in the game by redefining your superwoman. If you know a friend who may benefit from any of our topics, please spread the love and share my show. And if you like my show, please show me some love with those stars. Connect with me at drzoeshaw.com or any of my social medias at the handle Dr. Zoe Shaw. Join my free newsletter and get a free copy of 30-Minute Life Transformation, The Secret to Getting Stuff Done, by texting the word JOIN to 38470. I look forward to speaking with you wonderful ladies on social media after the show. Have a super week.
You've been listening to The Dr. Zoe Show, redefining your superwoman, with your host, Dr. Zoe Shaw. Don't forget to sign up for her monthly newsletters to get encouragement, tips, and skills for keeping your mind in the superwoman game. Connect with her now at www.drzoeshaw.com. Tell your friends and subscribe to her podcast on iTunes. Join us next time for another edition of The Dr. Zoe Show.